So Mike, I think we're just going to dive right in on this because you and I, we overlap in a lot of the operational types of things that we do our brokers. But I think that these are things that maybe the everyday investor who's looking at EB-5, especially for the first time, doesn't necessarily see as happening. But these are operations and these are processes that are vitally important, both from the integrity of our businesses, but also for the end client and making sure that they are making the correct investment decision in this very unique security that they're looking at. So a few of the things that we're going to touch on today is just the growing role of broker dealers, how EB-5 due diligence is completed, and why it's important. And then just some of the obligations that an investor should be aware of, and the best practices that are taken into account by projects that are working on these. I would also take it as a moment just to say that we are actually also drafting a white paper on a lot of these topics that we are very pleased to have you participating on. So, in addition to this webinar that we are so happy that you have tuned in on, that you're going to be able to read or listen to, we're going to have that white paper available for people soon. So, Mike, thank you for joining us for this, and thank you for participating in that.
Absolutely. Very excited about that. So I think it's an important focus that people need to learn more about.
Awesome. Well, so Mike, maybe if you could just start us off here, and I think what's important is just from a baseline standpoint that EB-5, even though it is a very unique security, it is a security, and there are different compliance aspects that go along with it. So maybe if you could just talk through maybe the growing role that broker dealers in this very unique security are playing, and the protection that provides to investors as they are going through and making these decisions.
Absolutely. So as a broker dealer and having been in the EB-5 space since 2012, we've definitely seen an evolution of the role of broker dealers and an evolution of the industry in general, which it basically, it's an area that really needs to be even more focused on. I think the thing that investors don't necessarily realize when they're evaluating these things, they're looking at as a conduit to a green card, and a lot of them just are focused on that piece of it. They're not so much focused on this is a private security that is your capital is 100% at risk. It's a lot of money that you're putting at risk. It's certainly a life-changing opportunity for you and your family to be able to invest and access the green card if the investment and the project is successful. But it is very important to understand that it's not just the marketing sheet that you get on that a regional center will give you, because a lot of times they're not highlighting the risks involved. That's on the investors. That's the investor's obligation to read the offering documents. And having dealt with hundreds of investors over the last 12 years, 13 years, it's clear that a lot of times they don't focus on that. So we've been very focused on making sure that, hey, there's lots of great benefits to this investment, but there's also risks that you need to be aware of. And we also, kind of take that into consideration when we're evaluating which projects to represent. As you know, that we go through a very rigorous due diligence process, as does your broker dealer, when evaluating which projects to represent and which developers to represent, which investment structures. So there's a lot of work that goes into making sure that the risks are mitigated, but there are definitely risks that I think investors need to be more focused on. And that's what we really do is our team of sales representatives that are financial securities representatives. They're trained to introduce investment opportunities to investors, and to make sure that they understand that this is an illiquid investment. It's 100% at risk. And yes, there are benefits, and we can show them the difference, in what each of the options that we provide will give them, but also what the what risks are may be involved, including conflicts of interest and other things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Vitally important. There's so many aspects that go into a successful investment in an EB-5 structure. And, having someone to be able and being able to understand those as a client is supremely important. I guess an important distinction to make as well is that, CanAm Investor Services, we are a FINRA registered broker dealer. We do all the due diligence on our projects and we represent them to clients. Sequence or Invest America does as well. With, I guess, a pretty important distinction being that CAM will only be representing the projects that are being that are being sponsored by CAM Enterprises. We are a dedicated broker dealer of that group. Whereas the group that you work for, you have the ability to represent different projects and to be able to offer them. That doesn't change the suitability assessment that is required of either of us in making sure that the investment that we are offering is a suitable one and will meet the needs and the characteristics of each investor, and as well as the different risk profiles. I mean, generally speaking, though, like all of these investments are at risk, and they definitively need to have the potential for loss or gain. I think what we always try to, and I think what the role of a broker dealer helps to do is to fully educate and fully make all of those risks aware and remind investors that even though this does need to be an at-risk investment, it doesn't need to be overly risky. It needs to meet the level of risk that you are comfortable in taking, which I think is always important for clients.